Welcome to Create at Home Hypertufa Planters with the Everett Public Library. For materials and supplies, you'll need equal parts of Portland cement, peat moss or coir fiber, perlite or vermiculite. Then you'll need a form. You'll need some spray-on oil, gloves, something to mix in, a trowel, and water. Optional items are a small inner form, fun things to press into the edge such as buttons, marbles, etc. And some textured wrap might be fun, like bubble wrap or corrugated cardboard wrap. Here are some photos of those items that you need. The Portland cement is smooth, it has no rocks in it, so concrete mix will not work, it's not the same thing. You'll need perlite or vermiculite, and vermiculite I like a little bit better personally because it doesn't have the white chunks, but some people like perlite. Coir fiber is an option if you don't want to use peat moss because of the environmental issues, but it doesn't look as readily available. It looks like you might need to order it. Next up is a video that shows the basic process. Okay, so we're going to mix up our Hypertufa mixture. We've got 1 part peat moss, 1 part perlite, and 1 part Portland cement, which is different from concrete mix. These two can be found in the gardening department and this in the building department of any sort of home improvement type store. We're going to mix these 3 together into a large container. Go away, bug. And you should be wearing a mask and gloves. I will have to get my gloves in a moment. And mix these all together. And you're going to want to break up the chunks, which I will do once I have my gloves on. Okay, so once you have gloves on, you can go through and break up any of those peat moss chunks. It seems to be the peat moss that's the worst for that. And then once you get it all stirred up, you'll want to start adding water. And anytime you mix up anything with cement or concrete, you want to do it slowly. So don't add too much water and then discover you've got it too soupy. So just keep adding a little bit at a time, keep stirring. And then you might want to stop once you get to a certain point and really get in there and mix in the dry parts. And you can tell this is still too dry. There we go, that's getting better. I'm going to put my water aside and really try to get the dry parts mixed in and see if we've got it ready. And I can see there's still too much dry stuff, so I will add some more water to those, specifically to those dry spots, and try to get those worked in. Now at this point, it's looking really good. You'll want to get in there with your gloves, squish it, try to make sure it holds together, which it does. This is a little bit on the wet side, but it will be fine. So you just don't want it to crumble and fall apart, and this is doing just fine. Okay, now I'm going to spray my form, which is an old hanging basket, with some spray oil. This one happens to be olive oil, but I don't think it matters which kind. This will just help it release later. Then I can go ahead and start putting in my Hypertufa mixture, and I'm just going to dump a bunch in to start with. and start forming it up the sides. And you can feel through your gloves probably that it's kind of warm, which is typical of any kind of concrete. And I'm not worried about this opening in the bottom because I need a drainage hole anyway. So I can see that I didn't mix up quite enough for this size pot. So I'll just make it a shallow kind of pot, which is good for succulents anyway. They have shallow roots. And you just start forming it up the sides and pushing on it. This mixture, it turns out to be pretty much perfect in terms of wetness. And I'm just going to keep going as far as I can, since I don't have quite enough. And kind of trying to stretch it. Doesn't need to be that thick. You don't want it to be super thin either though, because it needs to have some depth to hold together properly. One thing you can do is take another form, and I've got this old flower pot here, and you can press that down in there to help you form it, and then just press those sides. And you can take it out now, or you could do that later, but so that you can see this better, I'm just going to show you that I will continue to go around and make this look nice and show you in a moment what it looks like. Okay, I spent maybe 5 to 10 minutes smoothing this out and kind of coaxing it up the sides to make it a little bit thinner. So you can just take your time doing that. It's kind of fun, like playing in the mud, and get it nice and smooth on the top, or you can make a texture on the top, or you could even put in some gems, some glass gems like that. The thing you want to make sure of though is that you get it really well down in there so that they don't come out again. This mixture seems like it's dried quickly out here, so I'm not going to put these in because it feels a little dry. I'm just going to leave this one natural. But if you have a wetter mixture, if you end up with more water sitting on the top, that is a good time. You could put in some little objects like that. You could put rocks, gravel, all sorts of things, and there are more pictures of what you can do in the rest of the presentation. All right. Forms can be all shapes and sizes, although you probably don't want to go too large with your first experiments with this. You can also put in lots of different wraps and items to make a texture on the outside. Another set of images about how to use an inner form, and in this case there was bubble wrap used on the outside to give a very textural outside surface. You can definitely use cardboard boxes. It will be harder to find an inner mold, but you don't really need that. Just work on the walls and get them to stand up on their own. It just takes a little bit of time. This example shows some smaller bubble wrap as texture. In this picture you can see how I used some corrugated wrap around the edge, and that ended up with a really cool texture. Also, you can see how crockery looks pressed into the top edge. How to finish up your pots. You'll want to leave them in the forms for 2 days and lightly cover them with plastic and keep them out of the sun. You'll need a drainage hole, and you can make the hole either when it's very wet when you're first building the pot, like I did in the video, or you can wait a day or two and use a large drill bit to drill 1 or more holes. It's really easy to drill through at that point, but just make sure you clean off your drill bit afterwards. Two days later and the molds have been removed. These pieces still need to dry longer. They'll be still fragile for handling. You want to keep them loosely covered for about another week, and then let them dry out of the sun for a full month. After the month has gone by and your pots are ready to be planted with plants, one last step is to rinse or soak them in a pot of vinegar-water mixture to help remove any remaining alkalinity, because concrete and cement are alkaline and that will harm your plants. So the vinegar helps to remove that. And you're finally done. You can fill your pots with plants such as slow-growing sedums, which have shallow roots. And do make sure that you keep them watered occasionally, because these shallow pots will dry out quickly. Thank you for watching Create at Home with the Everett Public Library. See you next time.